Thank you all for coming tonight on this rainy night to celebrate an amazing book. We're biased, but by Susan Midalia. To start things off this evening, we're very lucky to have Casey Mulder here to do the Acknowledgement to Country.
Thanks, Laura. This is a pretty amazing opportunity for me because not only is it an honour to welcome everyone to Whadjuk Country tonight, but as a Balladong woman who has spent most of my life on Whadjuk Country, I just want to acknowledge that storytelling runs deep through our veins and through this nation, and it's a real honour to meet to celebrate the launch of this book tonight, Susan. And also I want to acknowledge all the First Nations people in the room and acknowledge that it is NAIDOC Week. I also just want to let you know that this book is particularly significant to me because I was lucky enough to be given a creative development scholarship with Midalia Books, and I had the opportunity to shadow Linda and Laura in the publication of this book and work alongside Susan in editing this. And I just want to thank Susan for just your gracious mentoring as well. You know, it's not always easy to have a first-time editor join a work, so I want to thank you for that. And I do think the way that we have worked together really does embody the richness of storytelling that is so true of the Noongar people of this nation. So welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Casey, for that beautiful acknowledgement. Hello and welcome. I'm Laura Keenan, and this is Linda Martin, and we're Ninth Parrot Press. And it's great to see so many writers and other publishing professionals and friends and family here tonight to celebrate the publication of Susan Midalia's collection of short fiction miniatures. We will soon be introducing the acclaimed poet Lucy Dougan to launch miniatures, but firstly there are some people we'd like to acknowledge for their invaluable assistance in making this book happen, but also for supporting Ninth Parrot Press. It truly does take a community to make a book.
Okay, I need to read because I'm a bit older than Laura, so I don't remember anything. So yeah, thanks everybody for being here tonight. And we've just got some people to thank. So firstly, Susan Midalia, of course, for writing such a beautiful collection, and thanks too for trusting Ninth Parrot Press with your work. Also the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, who provided a grant that enabled this work to be published. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that we really couldn't have done it without your financial support, so thank you. Casey Mulder, who you met, who was co-editor on the collection of short stories. Casey, your editing was invaluable and it was such a pleasure to work with you, so thank you. So Marley Mertens, who's here tonight, who's an emerging designer. And Marley, thank you for your wonderful cover. It's just been such a pleasure working with you, and you know, thanks for your patience as well, because for a designer it's really hard just to work with one person. Marley had input from about 7 people, so yeah, you managed that so well. Thanks, Marley. Midalia Books, who provided Casey Mulder with the Creative Development Scholarship. Keith Feltham for his typesetting, who people here know he is a typesetting legend. Writing WA for their ongoing support. David Allen Patale for your marketing. Jess Gately, thank you for live streaming this event. Poor Jess, she offered to help us on a launch like 3 years ago, and she hasn't been able to escape yet. Every time we need something, we're like, Jess. So, yeah, thanks for that. And Bronwyn Jones, who welcomed you at the door. And the independent bookshops who generously support our books. We really couldn't, do as well as we do without the independent bookstores. So thank you to them as well. Asher Burnett and Emily Elliott, who are selling books tonight. So they are Night Power Press volunteers and junior editors, and actually thank you for everything you've done. They've been with us for about 3 weeks, but have been amazing, and you've kind of saved Laura and I from a lot, so thanks again for everything and for selling books tonight. Yes, and finally, my publishing partner, Laura Keenan, for running Smooth Publishing Management and for being a wonderful friend and co-publisher. So, now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Lucy Dougan. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey and Laura and Linda. I must apologise, I'm probably the oldest person that's going to stand up here, so I'm really script bound tonight, so my apologies for that. But it is so lovely to be with you all here tonight to launch Susan Midalia's new collection of short stories, miniatures, published by Night Parrot Press. And I just want to add some things to Casey's lovely welcome. We know that the culture, history and connections to the land on which we're standing go back tens of thousands of years. And in NAIDOC Week especially, I'd like to acknowledge that it's the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and to pay my respects tonight to elders past, present and emerging. So I want to start with how I know Susan and how you likely know Susan. And at the risk of sounding like someone on the TV show, Would I Lie to You? This is Susan. And I first met her on the stairs in the arts building at UWA somewhere around 1986. She wasn't my tutor, but she must have been the course coordinator, because as a shy 20-something, I asked her, Dr. Midalia, can I have an extension, please? To which she replied kindly and with great brevity, note that, that's a skill, of course. However, she was my lecturer and just one of the best lecturers I've ever encountered, ever had, and my sister took her tutorial. So here comes that particular small world, the Perth world. And I'm certain that many of you here know Susan as a wonderful writer of short stories and novels, as a mentor, as we've just heard from Casey, an editor, a critic, and a teacher in many contexts. And this list could go on. She does so much for the literary community here, and we're so lucky for that. And that's also not to mention all the work that probably we don't always know about that she does for the writing sector nationally as well. And I always think writers don't have to do these things, but it's really generous and staunch when they do. And I feel especially blessed to be in a close reading book club with Susan, and most of its members are here tonight, and for those who aren't, I'm thinking of you. So when Susan asked me to launch miniatures, I was, as things seem to go, thinking about miniatures in a very different context. That strange, mini, stage-like world of Andrew Marvell's Moa poems. And I was actually almost at the point of getting her email, thinking of his Moa as a kind of little plastic farm figurine. And if you know these poems, you'll know tone is really unstable in this strange sequence, and that between them moving from one to the other, you can feel this immense disorientation, but also exhilaration, which I think is something that happens if you've read miniatures or you're about to read it. I think that's something you'll experience. Now I give you this frame to indicate how things in life can be mysteriously intertwined, and when they are, we should, I think, sit up and pay attention, but also because I think we could read Susan's miniatures as a fugue of sorts. Much like the evasive property developer of her story, Bonding Over Thomas Hardy, I'll tell you what our old friend Wikipedia has to say about the form of the fugue. It's a contrapuntal composition in which a short melody or phrase, the subject, is introduced by one part and successively taken up by others and developed by interweaving the parts. Now, I don't know is flash fiction, or all the names by which its variants are known, microlit, short stories, sudden fiction, etc. I think it's hilarious how small form has many names. Always lends itself to reading the collection sequentially, but this is one of the great pleasures of miniatures, the ways in which its themes, preoccupations and settings recur in different stories, and the diverse genres Susan wields throughout, with great surprise, I think, and great dexterity. So, for example, there's interviews, lists, questionnaires, marked up text, footnotes, and so on. And I'm sure that you can dip in and out of miniatures, just as you can a volume of short stories or poems. Those concentrated forms in which the reading of just one piece can leave you feeling replete. But I did enjoy the sensitive and assured ways in which this collection is ordered. I know it's sometimes thought that the rise of short fiction is about new modes of distribution, and I guess to some extent its rise of popularity is driven by the demands of digital technologies. But let's not forget that it's a really old form practiced by many cultures. Think of fables, parables, koans. It reflects that human need for that highly crafted short grab, be that in a prayer, pop music, poetry, or a joke. And I think that well-wrought short stories such as Susan writes fulfill that need too. And also because of brevity, this form is memorable and we could say almost portable. And I want to think about this gorgeous cover too, and particularly in terms of thinking about portability and to compliment Marley Mertens. Like one of Susan's titles, this cover is working overtime to tell us something very important about this particular world of miniatures. Firstly, there is the box of matches, something you can carry, something a child might make furniture for a doll's house with, or keep a beetle in. And then inside that, there's the writer labouring away at night, which is surprisingly beautiful and unexpected and fitting, I think, for such a hard-working writer. But I think it's also about the ways in which a writer like Susan can sneakily get in under all that apparent ordinariness of life in the burbs and illuminate the smallest places and stories. As the Australian Literary Review has noted, deep in the heart of the most comfortable suburbia, there's a faulty valve, and Midalia is adept at finding it. So, illumination is important too. Susan's short stories flare up suddenly and illuminate foibles, loss, bewilderment, heartbreak, and expose the state of the nation with deft satire. The character in the book's excellent second story, Phenomenal, who alone witnesses the mysterious, quote, golden shining fire, a ball the size of a human head, tumbling in front of her, close quote, could be an extended metaphor or metatextual clue for the ways in which these pieces work and see the world. And then on the back cover, we encounter the two matches, the spent one, the unspent one, lying side by side. Because this is a book about play, this is a playful form, and grief in equal measure. These stories can be really devastating close-ups too. I think it's such a fitting visual imagining of this collection. The title announces that this book has something to say about form and about representation. The pressure of everything that's not said, the pressure around the edges of that. In a piece reflecting on the practice of microfiction that's on Night Parrot's blog, Susan writes that life is always a contest between the known and the unknown, between the spoken and the silent, and that writing a story of less than 500 words is like wearing a corset. It's a really tight fit, this is still quoting Susan, but a writer can use the constraint to create a pleasing shape. Now, people familiar with Susan's short story collections will know just what a skillful practitioner of this demanding form she is. And you'll know that she can make you laugh and make you cry at the turn of a page. Now that's tremendously difficult to do and do well. And also that she has a compassionate, often again satirical eye on the best and the worst of being human. The characters in Susan's novels and short stories sometimes redeem themselves, not always, but I think that redemption is part of, if you like, the moral universe of her work. The short story, to give the reader a plot and developed character, which is contested in that first tense encounter with the arrogant novelist in the story Writing Woman, is such a feat to achieve inside a small word count. And for me, one of the greatest pleasures of encountering Susan's work in this form was to be left dangling as a reader, dangling within many a rich irresolution, to wonder, to despair at times, and also to hope. This collection brings a whole new oomph to that mantra of short story writing, arrive late, leave early. Now, I've been I was thinking about, Jamie's cookbooks, how they just get faster and faster. I was trying to transpose this phrase to the making of short stories, but all that does is make me feel like the head-turning bobbing duck in one of my favourite pieces, Bewilderment. The ducks, or the character that sees the duck, thinks the duck might be saying, "Where am I? What on earth am I doing here?" These are always important questions to ask, and although it's humorous to give a duck existential angst, it's an important signal. And Susan mentions this in her acknowledgements, that quote, "Comedy is always a serious business." In those same acknowledgements, she says with great humility that she's still learning this form. Susan, I think you've cracked it. But at the same time, I admire how you see yourself as a writer that's always still learning. As much as I sometimes share that bobbing duck's bewilderment at the taut irresolutions of this crafty form, at the same time, as a poet, I feel very at home in small spaces and with brevity and the work that tropes do. In your ongoing explorations in this form, I hope, to borrow some lines from poet Loreen Niedecker, that there will be no layoff from this condensery, and that all of us here tonight and beyond tonight will take away your short stories to keep close when we need that flare of illumination onto those slippages between the suburban and the strange, the said and the unsaid, the known and the unknown, grief and play. To you, dear Susan, to your family and friends gathered here, to your intrepid publishers at Night Parrot Press, Laura Keenan and Linda Martin, who are devoted to this experimental and intriguing form, I declare miniatures launched in Perth, Wooroloo, at Mount Lawley Bowling Club on the 9th of July 2022. Bravo, darling!
Thank you, Lucy. That was a poetic launch speech, beautifully crafted. Each word exactly the right one. Sorry, I've got to put my glasses on. That would help. I do have to take issue with Lucy, though. She said she was the oldest person to speak tonight. Honey, I got news on you. So I won't speak for long. So thank you again to Lucy for that beautiful launch speech. I think as a poet you understand the connections between poetry and short fiction, that it's about line breaks and placement and commas, all those things. We all know that anguish of finishing a story and thinking there are too many commas, and you go back and you take them out and then you put some back in again. So, and can I just say too that for those of you who don't know Lucy's poetry, please read it. She has 5 collections. And she has a new one coming out with Jeremiah Press called Monster Field, which Lucy tells me she pinched from another poet. And she's going to make quite clear that she pinched it from another poet. So thank you to Night Parrot Press, to Laura Keane and Linda Martin. I really admire your, I think politicians use the word courage when they mean foolhardiness, but thank you so much for establishing Night Parrot Press and for your devotion to the short form and to concentrating on West Australian writers, because those of you in the room who are writers, and I know there are quite a few of you, we know how hard it is for West Australian writers to get recognition elsewhere. So thank you for that brave enterprise. Night Parrot Press have published 2 anthologies, and their 3rd anthology will be coming out in October, and it will be launched at the Australian Short Story Festival. I hope you'll all come to that. Last year, Night Parrot Press published their first novella, a wonderful novella by Ros Thomas called, sorry.
That's a good title.
Sorry. No, it's not called Oceans. I haven't had any wine on. It's called How to Shave the Devil. Sorry, Ross. It's a wonderful novella, so please have a look at those other Night Parrot Press publications. I also like to thank Marley Mertens. Where are you, Marley? I did meet her earlier. For this beautiful cover. Everyone I know who's seen it loves it. It's inventive, it's witty, it's imaginative. So thank you. It's a really lovely cover. I'd also like to thank my husband Dan and my older son Jack for foregoing the match that the Dockers are playing tonight. They didn't make a point of this. I stupidly forgot there was a clash, but they didn't say anything. So thank you for being self-sacrificing. You know, Dockers fans have been long suffering, so I understand how important it is to watch games that they are now winning. Sorry, I'm an Eagles fan, you know, we won't go there. And thank you to our younger son, Harry, who's come all the way from Canberra for this launch. I'm really grateful for that. I'm sorry about the weather, Harry, but it's better than -2 degrees. And finally, just a few brief words about the collection. So I started my writing career relatively late, in my 50s, and my first editor at UWA Publishing was Linda Martin. And Linda and Laura were working at UWAP as editors at the time, but Linda edited my first 2 collections of short stories, and now here we are, back again. So it feels like a lovely return, as it were. And after that, I wrote 2 novels published by Fremantle Press. And I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And I started just writing these little things, these short stories. And one of the things I love about them is that you have the satisfaction of completion. You might take a week to write one that you're happy with. At the end, you've got it. You know, novels take 2 or 3 years, and it's really, really exhausting. What I love about the form, Lucy mentioned its playfulness, and you can have fun with very short pieces. You can abruptly alter the tone in ways that make readers kind of sit up. They're kind of audacious. I love the audacity of the short form. I'd like to read you a couple, if that's okay. But before I do that, I'd also like to say that this collection is dedicated to my dear friend Jane Southwell. Jane and I met when we were doing our PhDs together at UWA and took pity on one another. And I hope Jane won't mind me telling the story. We did actually finish, both of us, somewhat miraculously. But I have a very vivid memory of Jane, which was I was walking towards the arts building at UWA, and Jane was running in the opposite direction. And I said, "Where are you going?" And she said, "To hand in my thesis, and I have 5 minutes. And if I don't hand it in 5 minutes, I'll miss the boat." So she did hand it in. She also had 4 children. So it's a very admirable feat to complete a pretty grueling research process that you're thoroughly sick of by the time you get to the end of it. So I will now read you a couple of pieces, if that's okay. This is for Lucy, the poet, and it's called Allegedly. So Mrs. Brown from number 10 told reporters that her neighbour was a quiet man who kept to himself. Mr. Fritz from number 17 said his neighbour's letterbox had been stuffed with junk mail for weeks. A woman who didn't wish to be named said she'd heard shouts from her neighbour's house that sounded suspiciously like help. Police later told reporters they found the man in a darkened room, slumped over his desk and moaning. After a series of probing questions, they charged him for allegedly attempting to write a novel. The charge was subsequently upgraded to the alleged attempt to write a poem. I'll just read you one more. This is called Identity, and it's partly about the bewilderment I felt when, as a mature age student, I returned to UWA to do a PhD and discovered a vocabulary that I had not encountered before. Very theoretical language. And this story is also for people who have or have had adolescent children. Jenna was an 18-year-old, white, middle-class, heterosexual female. Looking for an edge in the job market and confronted with blandly bureaucratic forms, she asked her friends to make her sound interesting. Wesley, who'd been on many marches for racial equality, called her a symbol of white privilege. Carl, her Marxist ex-boyfriend, called her contemptibly bourgeois. Her bisexual boyfriend, Charles, described her as constrained by heteronormativity. Her best friend, Dora, enrolled in gender studies, called Jenna the victim of patriarchal oppression. Henry, majoring in sociology, described Jenna's identity as multifactorial. Her father called her a sweetie, and her mother told her to clean up her room. And sorry, just one more thing, I forgot to thank Casey Mulder, who co-edited the book with Linda, and they were both such a joy to work with. Writers in the room will know that when you finish a book, sometimes it's pure exhaustion, but sometimes it's elation. And you think, I've just written a masterpiece. And then the editors get hold of it. And you realise you haven't, and I mean this in all seriousness, that a lot of publishing houses no longer put money into editing, they put it into marketing. And I think it shows, and I feel very privileged to have had 2 very astute, flexible editors who I think made the book much better than it would have been otherwise. So thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. I should have said that at the beginning. Sorry, that was really rude. So please stay and have another drink, have something to eat from that delectable table. And I'm happy to sign books for anyone. I've signed a few already. A lot of people didn't ask me, and I feel there must be something wrong.